Just here for questions. Reference the incident that happened off of Ellison. Reference shoplifting and the crime in our city. So I'll just take any questions, unless you want a statement. But go right ahead.
Yeah, I guess we'll just start it off with
What happened?
yeah, what was going through your head when you recognized what was going on?
Yeah, a lot was going through my head, honestly, and that's in terms of everything and how how I am as a law enforcement officer on duty or off duty, safety of family, safety of patrons, and then everything that's going on in Albuquerque. It irritated me when I walked into the store and I saw the three individuals walk in, so my cop sense pretty much went up, and so I kept an eye on them and I saw what they were doing. And when they picked up a duffel bag that was not theirs, they were taking their time. They didn't have a care in the world. There's parents, children shopping in there for school. I went and asked the personnel at Dick's what their protocol and was for them for shoplifters, or even if something that escalated to a robbery. And they said there's nothing we can do, and that became very irritating. But at the same time, there was three females that I noticed were in there, and they were scared to do anything at all, and it was unsafe for them. There were no barriers, there was nothing. So I actually had the time to go look at all three subjects and see what they were doing. And so, as a law enforcement officer, right away I'm thinking, I'm off duty. I do have a duty to act, but what do we have? What charges do we have here? And I could already see that they were getting up to a felony level with the shoplifting. So this time, my wife, who was with me, went and asked the employer what their protocol was, and then they actually also asked what we're going to be doing or what they would be doing to stop it, and they said nothing. And you can tell she was really uncomfortable. So at this time, they went to the back, and my wife told the employee, "Hey, just so you know, my husband's the sheriff, and I know him. He's not going to let this go." So at that time, I saw one subject walk out. She was kicking him out with two duffel bags, and I didn't chase after him. I walked after him and said, "Hey, man, did you pay for that? I'll pay for those. Like, you don't need to steal stuff. I'll actually pay for those." And he just looked at me, and then he kind of took off. So tactically, I thought there's two other suspects in the store. I have my wife in the store. My niece and nephew and brother and sister-in-law actually left also. And I saw the scared female employees, and that just enraged me. So being enraged, you have to control that as law enforcement and make sure that you're doing things correctly. So at that time, I actually stepped out, and I called our dispatch to start getting our units en route and said, "Hey, there's some shoplifting going on. There could be higher crimes, and I'm going to need some backup here." And I actually had some time. So I went back in and looked at the subject in the back, and they just came out of the bathroom, and you can tell they were, because I asked one of the suspects, they were smoking fentanyl in the bathroom. And so when they came out, I went back, and everybody kind of looked at me. You can tell some people realized who I am. So the biggest thing that went through my head, too, can you imagine what if I didn't do anything? And I'm the sheriff of Bernalillo County, and we're just going to let this happen? That's not going to happen here in our county. I'm tired of it, just like the rest of the community is. So I approached the subject and told him, "Hey, put that stuff down." He looked at me, cursed at me, and he kind of, you can say, bowed up to me and did a posturing stance that we in law enforcement, he's going to become aggressive, and he did. But he was doing it mostly to get away, so I chased after him. We had a little foot pursuit in the store, and at the time, I did see another citizen paralleling me, so that actually made me proud as everything's going through my head, and cut him off because I really didn't want him to go into the parking lot so I can keep him contained. And I tackled him, immediately he started fighting. So he was fighting and going around, and he didn't hit me directly. He hit me a couple times trying to get away. And so, as law enforcement, I teach defensive tactics and use of force. Right away, I didn't want to have to hurt him, and I kept telling him that. He kept fighting. So I took him down. I did not want to have to strike him. I knew another subject was there. And I also knew my wife was there, and I could hear her in the background doing what she has to do. She's a great law enforcement wife. And I knew she was safe. And then I was looking around because we were stuck under some the swimsuit area and the shorts. I could see everybody was just standing around and circling me, but I didn't know where the other suspect was. So I kept telling him, "Man, I don't want to hurt you," because I knew if a second suspect came to attack me, it would escalate even further, and that's not something I wanted to do at all. So luckily it didn't. And finally, he started calming down, and I had to literally de-escalate him and tell him stop. I was identifying who I was. Granted, I'm in civilian clothes. Told him just stop, and I asked him what narcotic he was on, and immediately he said fentanyl. And I asked him when he took it, and he said the day before. I knew he took it that day also from the way he was acting. And I said, "We're going to get you help." And the other thing that irritated me, I'm always willing to help people who drug addiction's bad. But when you're committing a crime to that level, you can get some help after you go to jail and you're held accountable. There's other people with low-level crimes I'm all in for being rehabilitated. But this gentleman's a repeat offender, what I've been telling everybody before, and he's a violent repeat offender when he's willing to do that in a store. So right away he wanted to go to Matt's, which is now the care center that we're working on. I said he will get help for his treatment and drug addiction, but he will do that after he goes in front of a judge because you need to get him to the system. Not knowing that he had another felony pending warrant. I didn't know who the gentleman was. I just knew I had a felony shoplifting at the time. And from there, when I looked up, to my surprise, another off-duty deputy was there, and he helped me. That's the gentleman on the side of me, and I gave him commands to tell Eunice to step it up. Because again, I'm off duty, and I don't want to hurt the gentleman. I don't want things to escalate. I'd rather someone in a uniformed presence take him into custody, and that happened, and deputies did their job. And the deputies that responded, I want to commend them also. They responded quickly and efficiently, and we got them done and booked this gentleman in jail.
What would be the biggest message to the community? Because that's a great example of duty and just being committed to the society. What would be the biggest message for everybody?
The biggest message is follow through for me. I believe when I had a press conference when I first got elected, I told everybody we're coming. We're coming. I'm tired of it. And everybody is in the community. You go into any store, everyone's so brazen in the daylight. The employees are not feeling safe. People that are shopping there are not feeling safe. They're depending on law enforcement to do something. We have a duty to uphold the law, and that's in our oath. On or off duty, we do it appropriately. And I want to make sure that I lead by example. I'm asking our deputies to do all of this work and to do everything. I can sit behind that desk all day and Monday morning quarterback decisions and things of that nature. I lead by example. I always have. And it's just like I've told people even when I was running for sheriff, I'm a cop's cop. It's never going to leave my blood. I know I'm more of an administrator now, but it kicked in. And like I said, I'm tired of it, and I need to send a message that there's zero tolerance. And I hope that sends a message to the criminal justice system and also to make sure that people get the help for drug addiction. But you're just not going to walk in a store and literally shoplift, take your time knowing there's no consequences, and you can walk out because they know it's the store's policy because of liability. Yeah, no, not in our county. I'm tired of it.
Family.
So does this mean next year we can see you in the Brawl for the Bosque event?
I've been, what people don't know about me, I've been teaching defensive tactics for a while. I've done jiu-jitsu and MMA. It's just, I do those, and I was raised in a family with martial arts. And it's also just not for a sense of respect, but for self-defense. But at the same time, it came great in the situation, because if you see in the photos, I lost my shoe. So I went back into where I was on the mat. But it helps de-escalate, so I don't have to hurt him more. I just don't want to strike him and hit him, and he's pummeled. Both his and I blood was all over. And then what concerned me also is there's children watching. So at the same time, we always tell people, hey, we're held to a higher responsibility as law enforcement when we're off duty. How would that look if I was off duty and couldn't control myself because of my anger, and then I'm out there telling people they shouldn't be doing that? Again, I think it sends a big message to make sure you're leading by example, and that's what I want to do.
So do you think your background in martial arts and defensive tactics and grappling and such helped with this situation, whereas an officer that was less trained in that kind of stuff would have done things a little bit different?
Absolutely, and it brings it to a broader spectrum of like how do we train law enforcement in the state of New Mexico. And I've always said, not MMA, I believe really mostly defensive tactics, and I really don't like calling it that, but jiu-jitsu is very important to make sure you control someone on the ground, wait for backup and control a person, and you can de-escalate at the same time. And at the same time, as a law enforcement officer, you have to always fight to your feet. That's what I've taught. Because multiple suspects, where there's one, there's another one, or where there's one, there's two. It did help me. It keeps me calm. I mean, when you're in martial arts, you get beat up all the time. So it does give you a sense of confidence, but you have to be very meticulous in making sure that you're not overconfident and can just controlling the suspect and multitasking and speaking at the same time.
What did the people at the store tell you after you helped them and you make sure everything was secure?
They were happy. You can tell they were shell shocked because they're not used to anybody doing anything. And on that day, that guy ran into the wrong person. That's not going to happen in front of me. You could say they were grateful, at the same time scared, like, what do we do now? What's going on? And they went around on their business, and everybody was like, well, did they thank you? They did to a point, but I wasn't really looking for a thanks. I wanted to be sent as a broader metric and spectrum in hindsight. They kind of went back to their normal duties, which made me happy. I want to take it to the next level and tell their management and everybody else, which we're having a business roundtable today. We know that there's liability involved. We know that we have technology to identify these offenders that are doing a retail crime. But you have to do something to protect your employee. And whether people say I'm throwing this company under the bus or not, because they've done a lot for our community, we have to go farther. There was no barriers. There was a table with a cash register there. You can tell that this has happened there numerous times, and I've had a bunch of calls from the community. This happens 2 or 3 times there a week, and they know it. And if we've seen the area of Coors and Ellison, it's not the best of places anymore, and that'll be being taken care of also. We get people help, but you need to abide by the law and do what everybody else does when they pay for things. And I'll be willing to go buy you some things if you need some shoes or a shirt or pants. I think a lot of the people in the community will, but don't do crime and then you're showing our children what's going on here in Albuquerque. And I love Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, and it infuriates me to see how Albuquerque, how it's become and what people expect of it. And we have a lot of diversity and a lot of things to offer here, and I want to get it back to that point.
And for, let's say, someone who does want to step up, but maybe not have the physical or, you know, the background that you do, what would you say to those who may be watching who would want to step up, but don't know how to be calm, don't know how to obviously take someone down and call? What would you recommend them to do?
We always recommend not to intervene when you're with your family or you're as a civilian, because you don't know what weapons that subject has on him. And he kept reaching into his pants, didn't have any weapons. You never know. Take photos and video while at the same time you're calling 911. Even if we can't get there right away, because I see a lot of business, you guys can't get here right away. That's true. We can't be everywhere. But later, we know that these people are reoffending all the time. If we have photos of them, you can see at the alcohol store. A lot of people were enraged that was going on, and we caught them later, or APD did. That goes a long way for investigation purposes, and it actually helps us a lot for an investigation, because then other stores step in and says, that subject, we have him on film, he just did this last week. With that new law in place for the aggregate, for the organized retail theft, they're not going to get away, and it's going to be a misdemeanor each time. So what I would tell them is always be ready to have self-defense skills ready when you can, if you're available and you can do it. But don't intervene physically unless you absolutely have to. I would suggest, unless you see a threat to life or limb or yourself, that's it. For property, no. Leave that to law enforcement, even off duty. Just call us and take photos. That would be the most appropriate.
And would there be a website they'd be able to submit these to, or would it have to be over the phone?
Or I'd call 911, or call the non-emergency number. So for APD, 242-COPS, and for the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office is 798-7000. Call either one, because you're not going to know which jurisdiction you're in, and then we'll get it. That way we can start putting it into our systems. Us and the Albuquerque Police Department are working together along with organized retail people. We can make sure that we get in the system and look for the common offender.
And I guess my second question would be, like you said, with management and take care of employees, I guess a good example would be the Walmart that shut down because of how much theft there was. And do you think that a lot of employers nowadays don't consider their employees as much as they used to?
You know what, I think they should consider it more. Even if they do, there's always room for improvement and more. Just like law enforcement, we can always improve. That's one of the suggestions and questions I have for people I'll be meeting at our business roundtable later today, is what can they do and how can law enforcement work in concert with them? Because again, it's an immediate threat to the employee and the employer, not us. We want to make sure to do everything we can to not just empower them to call law enforcement, but at least feel protected by their company. Because now after shoplifting, you might go into something more serious as a robbery. And I can tell you the 3 females at Dick's, they were completely uncomfortable and they did not have the appropriate resources to deal with any incident like that.
Yeah, this subject, Mr. Arroyo, started getting on the system in 2018, and I mean, it's stolen vehicle, drugs, aggravated fleeing, aggravated battery against police officers, and then, you know, the list goes on and on and on, and then we're here at this situation. It seems like there was a failure, and how dangerous is it to have this individual back into society when there's a propensity to not care for the law enforcement that's trying to take him in custody? He's going to do whatever he needs to flee.
Yeah. 2 failures, and I believe I would say an overall failure of the whole criminal justice system. And that's whether you can say communication between, to find out the strengths and weaknesses between judges, district attorneys, even public defenders, things of that nature, how we would go back to the root cause. The root cause of this individual is narcotics. He's feeding his insatiable need for narcotics. We're not treating the problem. I think we have to make sure, again, we do things at the same time. He needs to be treated for his narcotics, but at this point, this is the offender, I tell you, he cannot be let out. He can be treated for his narcotics while he's in jail to be successful back in our community. If we catch you at an early stage for a low-level crime, that's what all these programs and diversion is for. But diversion only goes so long, and we need to have that cooperation from the person or suspect to want to follow through on getting themselves help. Since 2018, again, repeat violent offender. You named off 3 violent offender charges. That's going on too much in our community, and look what we dealt with. Luckily, that was ended in a nice, more peaceful way instead of someone losing their life or being seriously injured, if not myself. That's something now that I call DA Bregman on to keep this gentleman in jail. So this will be a great case study once again to see what happens with this individual. And look, I'll go talk to this gentleman. He lied to me about his name myself. I did tell him I really did want him to get help. I really do. Because I know what he's trying to feed, but it's not acceptable behavior, and now he needs to be held accountable for what he's done, and not just for attacking me and what he's done since 2018. It's going to catch up with you. He's going to get more violent, and he's going to keep escalating. I guarantee it. We've all seen it in law enforcement, and eventually it'll come into something where he's doing a higher crime, such as robbery or possibly a homicide.
One last thing, was there an amount that they tallied that you recovered because of your step?
There was the exact amount. I believe it was $567, and anything in the state of New Mexico is $500 and up as a felony. That's what I was looking at, and I could tell it was a discount store, so a bunch of stuff was going through my head. So I was sitting there with a discount store, because at the same time I have to think about, yes, I'm still going to stop this individual, but say we get in and it escalates and it's a misdemeanor, the level of crime. I didn't know he had a felony warrant at the time, but it was felony shoplifting. And everybody says, you know what, that's a small amount, but it adds up. And like I said, now it's the message. And I really think, not because of myself, I'll never put attention on myself. I think with everything going on and everybody's attention and comments and anger, everybody has the criminal justice system's attention, and now it's time to do something. I think this is a perfect moment in time with DA Bregman that I work very closely with to do something. Everybody's angry at different agencies. I can understand that, but at the same time, it's our opportunity to communicate and work together to finish this. And if nobody else wants to do it, the sheriff's office is always here to do it. So that's something that I'll never let go. And now I know when I go into another store, it might happen again with how brazen it is these days. So we'll be doing a lot of operations around the whole county of Bernalillo to make sure we start negating some of these problems.